Hello and welcome to Britive and AWS joint webinar today. Thanks a lot for joining. Today we will discuss how AWS and Britive eliminating static access and removing friction in adopting modern IAM practices. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. With that, my name is Shahzad. I'm part of the solutions architecture team here at Britive, and our goal is to help customers stop breaches happening a lot these days due to always-on permissions, access keys, persistent token, right? With that, I would like to introduce Simon, who is co-presenting with me from AWS. Simon, please go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks for having me and inviting me to today's event. As you mentioned, my name is Simon Panek. I am a partner solutions architect at AWS, which means I work closely with partners in our service of our joint customers. So today's a good fit because it gives me a chance to explain how we work alongside Britive to create a better product together. With that, let's go ahead and touch on our first slide where we can talk about the goals for today.
Yeah. Simon, can I please just let our audience know that we will be taking questions through the Q&A panel, and you will also get a chance to ask questions towards the end. So please have those questions coming in.
Sounds good. So today, what's the point? What are we going to do? We're going to start off by talking a little bit about AWS and Britive and our partnership. And then we're going to focus a little more specifically on identity access and management and discuss why that matters specifically today. Our hope is that as you leave, you will take a few things away with you. One being a better understanding of the identity risks currently in the cloud and hybrid clouds, how Britive complements AWS services and we work better together. The ability they offer faster auditable access to critical systems, and they offer the ability to protect identities and stop breaches and improve our services overall. In the end, we're going to see a successful implementation so that you have an idea of how you can go ahead and implement this yourself in your own environments. So let's take a little bit closer look at our specific agenda. As I mentioned, we'll start off with the partnership, and then we're going to talk about the current security challenges within the cloud environments and how AWS approaches that. For there, we'll talk a little bit about the innovation AWS has done with IAM and role assumption. And then we'll move more in depth into Britive's product and platform, see a demo, actually interact with their architecture a little bit, and then go through actual financial case study to see how it can successfully be implemented. In the end, we'll save some time for some live questions and answers, but as Shahzad mentioned, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A feature during, and if one of us isn't able to answer as we move through, we'll bring it up again at the end. So to begin with, our partnership. AWS offers a wide breadth and depth of services. Now, in Amazonian speak, that really just means we offer a lot of services and we offer a lot of features within those services. But one thing we've chosen to do consciously is work with partners, because partners allow us to serve our customers with greater differentiation and a better overall product together. As a member of the APN, or AWS Partner Network, Britive is a validated software partner, having completed our foundational technical review, and they are also currently pursuing an AWS security competency validation befitting their security expertise. Britive's dynamic cloud permissioning platform is available on the AWS Marketplace, where you can seamlessly integrate this and implement it within your own environment. Britive also supports our customers across their complex environments, including AWS Cloud, multi-cloud, and hybrid setups, which is why we're happy to work alongside them. And Britive's solution running on top of AWS infrastructure helps to prevent breaches and reduce business risk overall, two critical features in today's business world. As we move forward, let's discuss the actual cloud security challenges that we're seeing in the environments today. One thing we see is that historically, security in the cloud has been kind of known as a hindrance to innovation and creates team friction. We've also seen that there is typically a shortage of security expertise in the industry, making it difficult to implement properly. More recently, we've seen an evolving threat landscape. With more bots and AI agents actively in the field, there are more things we need to be protected from and control access to. And additionally, the importance of identity protection and privacy demands are always increasing. Historically, we've seen that static credentials, static access keys, and static tokens providing persistent access has created a potentially insecure environment. In that, if one of these secrets becomes compromised, a malicious actor can now have extended access to resources within your environment. Additionally, more recently, we're seeing a growing risk from these non-human entities, bots and AI agents, as I mentioned. We're also seeing that we need the ability to extend identity security controls beyond AWS to on-prem environment, hybrid environments, and multi-cloud environments. Now, since its inception, AWS has always taken security to be the #1 priority. While we offer numerous services to secure our data, four of which kind of categories you see here: the ability to encrypt your data, the ability to share it securely with others, the ability to review and audit access your data. Today, we're going to be focusing on the fourth category here, which is access control and AWS identity and access management. The features and benefits offered by AWS IAM are crucial in that they are applicable across all AWS services. Importantly, they were developed and continually innovated upon with regard to the challenges mentioned on the previous slide. Today, we'll be discussing some of the primary ways that AWS IAM can be used to secure your environment, as well as how AWS native security services can be enhanced by Britive. If we take a step forward, before jumping into the specific service details, I want to share this slide because it demonstrates AWS' commitment to working with and satisfying third-party security and compliance controls. AWS supports more than 140 security standards and compliance certifications, including PCSI, HIPAA, FedRAMP, GDPR, and many more. Governments around the world have accredited AWS to run their highest classified workloads. I know that many of you in the audience today operate in highly regulated environments. We maintain a dedicated service called AWS Artifact that you can use to access all of our third-party compliance reports and security documentation. And we'll be sharing a link to that towards the end of today's demonstration. Now, before we get too deep into this, I'd like to take a step back and say, as we develop these services and these features, what has been our guiding principles? And really what the issue is we work backwards at AWS. So what are our customers telling us they need from a modern IAM control system? What we've heard is that customers want to centralize their security, reduce the manual overhead, and make it easier to control on a large scale. They also want protection from modern cloud deployed applications like Kubernetes or serverless. They want the ability to manage access and resource governance so that they know who can access what resources under what conditions. They also want to implement fine-grained permissions and preventative guardrails from within their organization. And they want to improve security and compliance posture with access analysis and detailed audit reporting to maintain regulations. But even with all of these requirements, they want their teams to deliver products to customers as fast as possible. So they need frictionless access to AWS resources and business applications. Lastly, we're also hearing that customers want to accelerate their journey towards zero trust with a least privilege model and appropriate permissions. Together, AWS and Britive offer all of these capabilities and do so in a way that reduces overall cybersecurity risk. Now, let's start looking into some of these actual services. AWS provides many services to protect business applications. You see a number of these here. IAM is the main service and entry point. It securely manages access to AWS services and resources. Think of it as the main security gate. Then you can add in layers of other security controls and using various AWS and partner services. IAM can protect business applications across or access at AWS account level and at the organization level. IAM allows fine-grained access with JSON-based policy definition. We'll touch on that in a second. IAM also allows federation with various identity and authorization providers, such as Britive, to add additional controls and guardrails. Now let's take a little bit look into how this all works. Underlying all of these services, IAM policies govern who can perform actions on specific resources and in what scenarios. In IAM policies, you have principals. Those are the identities in the IAM system. Your identities are going to perform actions in terms of API requests involving specific AWS resources. Here we can see an example where an S3 bucket or the objects within the S3 bucket are the resources. And you can see on the left, the roles or principals are the named identities that are able to perform those API actions. It's easy to see that securely controlling who or what entities are named as principals on a policy is crucial in ensuring the overall efficacy of the process. But equally important in terms of usability, human users and non-human identities need a seamless and real-time way to be added to and removed from policies. The tasks a human or non-human is assigned to is not a static thing. Their responsibilities may shift minute to minute, so the permissions need to be both accurate and flexible to overcome the security challenge mentioned in the beginning, relating to security standing in the way of productivity and innovation. Later in our discussion, we'll see how Britive's solution supports the secure flexibility required by today's users. Now, to take a little bit closer look into how these roles work. AWS Identity and Access Management roles and policies are both used for access control. In IAM, a role is an identity with permission policies that determine what the identity can and cannot do in AWS. However, a role does not have any credentials. I haven't moved recently enough, so my lights just turned off. I'm going to move real quick here so that I can get us some visibility.
We can see you, Simon. It's a bit dark, but that's okay.
In that case, I will continue. My apologies. So what we're saying is that these identities are being uniquely associated not with one singular person or identity, but it's a role, and the role is intended to be assumed by anyone who has the permission and need to use it. An IAM user can assume a role to temporarily take on different permissions for a specific task. Now, a role can be assigned to a federated user as well. For example, a federated user coming from Britive who signs in by using an external identity provider instead of through IAM specifically. AWS uses details passed by that identity provider, like Britive, to determine which role is mapped to the federated user. So who all can actually take on these roles? Well, we see a few of them listed here. We could have IAM users within the same account. We could have IAM users in a different account, which would be called a cross-access IAM role. We could have a web service like EC2, where an instance is actually granted permission to perform certain activities. Or as I mentioned, we can have an external user, someone that's authenticated by a SAML 2.0 external identity provider, an IDP, such like Britive, or through OpenID Connect or a custom-built identity broker. So this gives us the flexibility to allow a number of different users and identities to have specifically predefined role access and permissions to particular resources within the accounts. If we move to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about role assumption. Role assumption is a key innovation by AWS. It enables just-in-time access with zero standing privilege approach. Just-in-time access grants entities the minimum level of access to resources at the time it is needed for a task. The access is limited in scope in terms of both time and permissions. Zero standing privilege is closely related. It's a design in which entities do not have long-term running permissions. Instead, they're granted specific permissions at their time of need, and the permissions are revoked once the task is complete. This innovation is key to protecting identities when you have multiple environments that require granular permissions. So now, as an example, imagine you have three environments. You have your production environment, your testing environment, and your development environment. By creating three separate roles, you can now assign access specific to each user depending on what tasks they're working on. If they need to deploy changes to testing, you can provide temporary, limited access specifically to the testing environment and know that they cannot accidentally or maliciously make changes to the development or production environment. This same concept is extended to all other services in AWS cloud computing. Now, as we move to a little more specific discussion of Britive's capabilities, I'd like to show a little more explanation here as how a user or an identity can be provided S3 granular just-in-time access with zero standing privileges. Again, S3 here is just a stand-in for any resource within AWS. Britive is an AWS partner that accelerates and scales native AWS role assumption across hundreds of AWS accounts and environments. It's a turnkey SaaS platform designed to secure both human and non-human identities. From an implementation perspective, Britive is seamlessly integrated as an identity provider, or IDP, within AWS IAM. Once a federated trust is established, users and identities can be authorized to access specific AWS resources, for example, here an S3 bucket, without the need for service accounts or static credentials. As shown in step 2, access is granted using the AWS Native Security Token Service, or STS, and IAM APIs within the control plane. Britive issues short-lived credentials for access via the application's data plane. When the session ends or the user completes their task, permissions are automatically then revoked. This ensures zero standing privileges in the AWS environment. A key advantage to note is that Britive operates without agents or proxies. This means that access to AWS services like S3 is direct, with no added latency or performance overhead. And before I pass this over to move more in depth into Britive, I'd like to leave you with a few best practices that AWS expects for identity management and access. The first one that's very relevant today is that as you scale your business, we recommend you take on an ISV partner such as Britive to help you scale and broaden your ability to maintain identity and access management control. Second, you should set up granular IAM controls and permissions. You should be providing roles with specific access that are scoped to the requirements of a task and timely scoped so that that permission is not persistent. Additionally, you should be tracking the growing number of accounts, roles, and permissions so that you know at all times which users and identities have access to which resources. You should also be setting up an audit trail within AWS, other clouds, your SaaS on-prem environment, and do so in a way that you can easily pass this information to regulatory bodies when needed. When possible, you should avoid proxies and agents in order to reduce latency and computational overhead. Additionally, you should be designing your systems with the cloud-native API-based approach in mind. This is to make you more agile and allow you to develop and deploy much more quickly. And finally, you should use just-in-time access with zero standing privileges, as we mentioned using role assumption in the previous slides. This is going to allow you to help scope that access and reduce potential threat vectors. We've heard from both longstanding AWS. If you want to give me one more second, there we go. Yeah. We've heard from longstanding AWS customers and those in the early stages of their cloud modernization journey that are using AWS to scale their businesses. They are seeking a way to effectively manage identities and access within their growing AWS environments. As these organizations have grown, many customers have found it increasingly challenging to keep track of all the different IAM users, roles, permissions that they have set up, making it difficult to ensure accurate permission levels. This is where Britive comes in. Britive, along with AWS, offers a solution that is better together. AWS provides the secure infrastructure and tools that we touched on in previous slides, while Britive offers a single interface to simplify privileged access management across complex environments. I'm going to hand this back to Shahzad now to give us a better understanding of how Britive can further reduce risk, enhance regulatory compliance, and improve agility across your many AWS environments.
All right. Thank you, Simon. Really awesome about the partnership. First of all, like I said in the beginning, we are helping a lot of customers, enterprise customers, startups, tech companies, jointly to solve this huge problem and the issue that we see across the board, where ransomwares are happening daily, breaches are happening, and then together we are, serving our customers and making sure their crown jewel applications are protected, their systems are protected, and there are no standing permissions or privileges in the system. So that in case something got breached or a password got stolen or API was, leaked through GitHub and whatnot, since there is no standing permission or privilege, the systems are still protected, right? So this is where I would like your attention, where we actually work jointly hand in hand with this financial institute and discuss their customers' case study. We can share more detail about this customer if you come to us, talk to us, email us, connect us on LinkedIn, whatnot. We can share more information about this institute. But the important thing to remember that this is not just about the financial institute. This issue is happening across the board, across enterprises, across different organizations. So the learning that you will get here will be applicable not only to this financial institute, but also to other enterprises, other verticals, such as retail and then tech industries or any other automotive, for example, right? So they actually picked up this modern identity security platform, and the main reason is obviously to stop breaches and reduce the risk of this eliminating of this always on access or excessive access that they had for their systems. And obviously, since the enterprise landscape is not just AWS, they wanted to implement this security posture across the board, beyond AWS, beyond SaaS, all the way reaching out to the on-premise world. So this is where our technology is enforcing the zero trust principles with the least privilege option for a cloud, multiple cloud, SaaS, and hybrid cloud. And like we mentioned, without any agent proxy and with the ZSP framework. Okay, so that's the challenge we see out there. And if you talk to your your partner, AWS analyst, for example, Gartner, they will also tell you that it's a serious problem. And the problem is basically happening because of the identity breaches and whatnot, right? If you look at the security itself, you should always have defense in depth mentality, right? So different layers in your technology stack where you need to protect your assets, right? And the journey actually starts from all the way from the IAM, identity and access management, and then it goes deeper into your network security, firewall, and whatnot, right? So that's the reason IAM, protecting IAM, and then making sure your security postures are robust becomes very, very important, right? And that's the reason we have Brightive as a cloud-native, API-driven modern platform that is being adopted by a lot of enterprises. It's built on the zero standing privilege philosophy. The foundation is just-in-time access. So it's not about password rotation. That's what you see with the legacy system, where they rotate the password and they call it just-in-time. That's not the right approach. The permissions that we see are excessive. So a person or a group or a member of a group might have access to S3 bucket or to the on-premise direct connect, for example, or to the firewall. That should not be the case, right? So you should have the permissions, like we discussed in the best practices as well, designed for who is actually trying to access this resource, right? And just for the duration of time. The important thing to remember that in the market out there, you will see some platform, they are catering the need for the on-premise. And then they have another platform for the non-human identities. That's not the case here with Brightive. We have the single unified platform catering all the needs for your humans, non-humans, and these days agentic AI workflows. And it's actually applicable to cloud, multi-cloud SaaS, and hybrid locations. So the outcome is important, right? Because technology is there. Definitely, you need to implement technology stack and make sure you're providing services to your users and whatnot. But the business outcome is extremely important, which is about strengthening your financial security posture or your overall company security posture, and also the frictionless security. Because oftentimes we have seen that a company would try to acquire a tool and it will create a friction within the team in terms of adoption. So what you're going to see here that we are actually eliminating all those frictions by providing the necessary features and tool set for different personas in your organization. So you could be developer, you could be the admin, you could be in the IT operation side. It's applicable to all the users in your organization, right? So going beyond the financial institute, you can see we have acquired a lot of large logos and are helping a lot of customers implement the best IAM practices, right? So the company was founded in 2018. We have decades of experience of building and working very closely with the large enterprises and customers, building their IAM best practices. The product itself was built very, in terms of talking to real customer, the real pain, talking to CISOs, what they see out there, where the industry was heading, right? Because cloud is the momentum basically, right? And then back then, a lot of customers were struggling to adopt the cloud and they were worried about the security of the cloud. So we actually looked at their problem statement, their pain point, and that's how we built this application, which is true cloud native SaaS platform delivered as a SaaS. So you don't have to manage and maintain. It is born in the cloud, definitely, but it is built for anywhere. Your SaaS application, your on-premise data center, your colo location, or your IoT systems out there, right? So we take the API approach very seriously. So it's an API first platform where you can actually interact with the platform with all the APIs that we provide. And also we ourselves, when we talk to these destination systems like AWS or SaaS provider, we also talk to them through our cloud native API first approach. Okay, so it's very DevOps friendly. We have Terraform, we have SDKs, we have API and the CLI that's going to see here. And like we mentioned before, there is no proxy, no agent. So the installation deployment is very fast, very quick. There are no delays. Okay, so let me bring your attention to this ecosystem, the enterprise ecosystem or tech stack that we see day in, day out, right? So on the left-hand side, what you see is basically your humans, non-humans, or AI agent trying to get access to your crown jewel applications deployed in cloud, in SaaS, or in the on-premise hybrid world, right? So what you would see that pretty much all the enterprises that at least I talk to, they have some sort of identity provider to provide SSO, single sign-on, right? This actually tells this organization that who this person is, right? But the problem that is happening that people are relying on this SSO and thinking about the authorization done through these. And that is not the case. The authorization or zero standing privilege is the piece that is missing in this equation. So that's the reason we partner with these identity provider, Okta, Azure, Dew, Ping Identity, you name it. And once you deploy Britive from the SaaS perspective, we skim all the users and data and their grouping into Britive. So once you come to your, let's say Okta, you see the Britive tile, you click on it, you land into the Britive user interface. Or same thing is true with the CLI. CLI is the same, right? So once you are here in Britive, now based on who you are, what your authorization profile is, you would get granular access to, let's say, AWS S3, as we mentioned before. Or if you want to get access to the database, MySQL database, you will get access not only to the database, but we can go more granular and provide you access to the specific table, right? So that's how we actually provide and protect and follow the principle of least privilege. Now, we do understand that in the tech stack, you have a Terraform automation with different systems, you have GitHub. So we do actually partner and integrate with not only these infrastructure as code provider, but also the IGAs and ITSM of the world, right? Because the value that you will see that we provide on top of the AWS technology is the addition of these guardrails or constraints. For example, when you are getting access to, let's say, S3 bucket, should it be authorized by your manager before you get access to the critical, let's say, financial reports there in the S3 bucket? So there is an approval process required, right? So that's what we add on top of the AWS provided services at the runtime basis very quickly. So once the approval is done, then and only then you will get access to S3 bucket, right? Then auditing, reporting, compliance, extremely important. So Britive does provide you with the single pane of glass to get all the audit reports and all the logs related to who is logging in, what they are doing, what profile they're checking out, what kind of authorization they're getting, how long they're getting it for, was the approval done properly, and whatnot. So that is all inside the Britive platform. But we can also ship this to SIEM provider like Splunk or any other system that you would have, right? So if you go to our website, you will see a list of integrations, and we have hundreds of integrations. So it doesn't really matter what you see here or the logos that you see here. We can actually go and talk to these systems and provide this integration beyond what you just see on this slide, right? And then the last but not the least is the CSPM and CNAP provider, right? So when they're finding the issues related to IAM, they're telling you that this is the issue, go fix it. They're not enforcing it. For the enforcement, customers are sending this information to Britive. We are looking at it, we are making the correlation, and we are telling customers that, hey, this information that you're providing to us, we can actually protect it with our platform. So we create the authorization profile, we contain their access. Maybe someone has excessive permission that they're not using today, and that's what we are getting from this, for example. So we get this data, we contain it, we curtail it, and then we provide just-in-time access to the resources based on the information that we get from these systems. Okay, so if I double click on the Britive SaaS platform, first thing important to mention is that this Britive platform is built on AWS technology. So within the SaaS platform, we have a number of features. Obviously, I'm not showing you all the features, but some important one. For example, zero standing privilege, JIT access engine, the auditing, the compliance reporting, out-of-the-box reporting that you need to satisfy your auditor. Notification is very powerful. Anything happening in the system, you get notified about this, and notification can be done through different mediums. Visibility is part and parcel of the product. Then we have the secret vault to support some legacy use cases with the on-premise Active Directory and databases, right? The management and access is very important. Like I said, this is where we are removing a lot of frictions because we are providing you different options, right? So you can access this platform and manage this platform through API, through user interface. CLI, we have the CLI. And the CLI, by the way, can be embedded in AWS CLI or other cloud CLIs as well. So from the frictionless point of view, there is no friction. Your developers are using the same CLI as they use today. Behind the scene, Britive authorization process kicks in and provides this contained access to the resources, right? Terraform is very powerful. You can actually use Terraform to manage and access this system and provide automation and make it part of your CI/CD pipelines. That's important, right? And then we have the Slack and Teams integration where your users or admins don't need to leave Slack. They can manage the system or Britive using the Slack bot that we have, right? And this is all applicable to humans, non-humans, and agentic AI workloads that we see today, okay? Now, let me take you one step further. And like I mentioned before, all the interaction that is happening or the way we are providing this ZSP with just-in-time mentality is happening through the API. And that's the reason there is no latency. It's very fast. And it is all governed by this Britive Common Policy Framework, right? So when you check out a resource from, let's say, AWS, the API request goes to AWS, like we saw in the previous slides. And then you get access to these resources, right? And obviously, I'm just showing a subset of applications, but pretty much all the applications that are under IAM are actually covered and governed by this authorization platform, right? So Britive complements AWS feature set or the technology by adding multi-factor authentication on top of it. So let's say if you're getting access to S3 or EKS, we will inject MFA runtime before you can get access to it. Session invalidation is our feature where you can actually invalidate an existing session with the Britive patented technology. We give you the self-service option. So if your users want to get access to, let's say, a profile that does not exist today in Britive, they can submit the request directly from the platform. The incident and ticket management is part of it. We provide the business context when the user comes in and trying to get access to an application or a system. We provide that business context. And the compliance report and then auditability is out of the box, right? In order to for us to manage these resources or provide the same common policy framework to on-premise resources, we have a software component called Britive Access Broker. So again, this is not in the data plane, it's just brokering the connection, making sure the request that is coming in from the Britive platform in the form of API is actually being received by this access broker. And then access broker's responsibility is to talk to these systems in their native language. Could be PowerShell, could be shell scripting or Python or the database command, and make sure that they are under the same common policy framework umbrella. They are actually getting access just in time for the duration and time and to the service that they need access to, not a broad level access, right? Like you see in some legacy use cases. And there is no proxy and no agent, okay? So very important. Okay, so let me quickly take you into the demo of this solution, and that will actually help you understand it in detail, okay? All right. So this is our Britive user interface. So as a user, when you log into Britive user interface, you see the profile, authorization profile that are assigned to you based on who you are and what your business objective is. Or maybe you're part of a specific Azure group, and that's how you got access to this profile, right? So in my example, I will use S3 as an example here. I want to get S3 full access. I come here, I see the profile assigned to me. I see the AWS environment, the ID, and I have option to check out this profile using either the console or CLI. So I want to use the console option, check out this profile. And now once I click on this, now we are making those API calls, right? And you see it's so quick, right? You can see I got access only for 59 minutes in this case. And again, this is something that you can configure as part of the policy, as part of the profile, right? So when I click on it, it will take me into AWS. And when you see, when I log into AWS, you can see I'm actually coming in as a federated user. Very important, right? And you can see I have my own identity here. I'm not a service account. So anything that I would do is going to be logged in the CloudTrail, right? So you can actually track the user activity. You can see what they are getting access to. And you will also notice that I don't have access to any other service. I'm getting access denied. But if I go to S3, since this profile gives me access to S3, now I can get access to these buckets. I can perform my job. And once I'm done, I can actually come back in and then check in this, right? So when I check this profile in, it means I'm saying I don't need this authorization anymore. So once this is checked in, I will not have access to S3 bucket, right? And this could happen like a user could initiate it, or when my timer expires, it will automatically revoke all my permissions from AWS and automatically logs me off, right? Now, if I talk about the CLI I mentioned before, this is where we are removing the friction, right? So the interaction that you noticed was happening through the user interface, but you know, and I know developers who don't like user interface, they love CLI, right? So if you look at this screen here, what we have is something called the Britive CLI, Python-based Britive CLI, which allows you to interact with this SaaS platform all using CLI without leaving your interface. And this could be part of the Visual Studio Code, right? Or could be part of your existing CLI. You can embed this into your existing CLI framework. So if I now run this CLI command, you can see I can see all the profiles I have access to, right? So I can actually list all the S3 bucket directly from the CLI. And notice I'm not using the PyBrighty CLI in this case. This is the AWS CLI that you're familiar with, right? So you're going to run this AWS S3 list CLI, and in the background, it will automatically check out the Brightive profile. And now it will give me access to the S3 buckets, right? It's very powerful. Now, let me take it one step further, because we discussed about the non-human identities. What about some non-human is trying to get access or want to get access to S3 bucket to perform some critical business job, right? So this is also possible. And I have a demo here where I have this workflow, which I can run manually, but obviously in your CI/CD pipeline, there will be a trigger that will trigger this GitHub Actions workflow. And when I run this workflow, now this workflow automatically going into the back, running this workflow, the GitHub Actions, and it's actually listing the S3 buckets for me. So you can see it performs specific jobs before it can actually show me this bucket. It talked to AWS using the AWS CLI. It checked out the profile. It got the short-lived token from the AWS service. And based on that token and authorization profile, it has access to this S3 bucket only. You can list this S3 bucket. You can perform further logic to it. And that's how you can also secure the non-human interfaces or non-human identities. Very important. So all delivered through the same umbrella. Okay. All right. So we discussed and touched upon all these three personas, and that's that should give you the clear indication of how we can actually remove friction within your organization and can deploy and implement the solution very quickly, right? So that's the authorization piece. What about visibility, right? So like I said before, when we integrate with AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, SaaS provider, we scan the data, we scan the information and provide you this visibility, and we tell you exactly where those high risk areas are, right? So in this case, AWS is being scanned, and I can tell you that there are about 8 accounts. They have excessive permissions. So go back, take a look, and then if you want to protect these accounts, Brightive can quickly create those profiles and give you this limited access with the ZSP approach, zero standing privilege. So when you need access to this, you will get access to this, right? So a lot of visibility is actually baked into the platform. We discussed about the guardrails, the constraints that we add on top of AWS technology. And this is what you see here, right? This is the policy that is responsible to provide this granular access to S3 bucket, right? There are different conditions that you can apply. Is this customer coming from a proper IP address? Is it whitelisted? Is it coming from a VPN? If not, then you will not have access to this. Is there a contractor that is trying to get access to this profile? You want to add a start date, end date to it. Justification we discussed already, right? You want to integrate it with Jira or ServiceNow or other systems. You want to have this step-up verification before they get access to this critical resource. Is approval required? All these constraints are the innovative policy and the common policy that we are applying not only to AWS, but across the board, right? And I mentioned about the Slack. So this is how the Slack bot looks like, right? So you can see we have with the Slack, the bot, we have, you can list the profile, you can check out the profile, check in the profile. So you can basically perform both admin activities and also user activities with this. The audit log is all can be seen here, right? All activities are being logged, and you can also send these logs to your favorite SIEM provider. So that's also supported. The NHI use case that I just showed you, you can see, the actor who actually ran that, the automation, and then the target, like what they were trying to get access to. In this case, S3 bucket, right? We discussed about the AWS artifact. So I just wanted to quickly show you. It's here on this website. You can take a look at the AWS security and compliance reports. Britive is also available as part of the AWS marketplace. So, go take a look at it. If you want to connect, come talk to us. It's on the marketplace and very simple and easy to deploy solution because, like I said, it's SaaS. So there is no friction and it's very quick implementation and deployment. Okay. All right. So now let me come back to what I just discussed. So quickly a recap, because I think this is very important for you to remember. This is how the just-in-time authorization is happening without any standing privileges, without any password rotation, without any proxy, without any agent. This example is applicable to AWS. But like I said, this is the same approach we follow to other clouds, the SaaS applications, your Snowflake, Salesforce, and also to the on-premise resources. And since it's happening with really fast with the API approach, the access to these resources is happening directly between the identity and the resource itself. So there is no middleman or proxy in between. So I will leave it here just as a reference, but this is what we already discussed during the demo. All right, so let's talk about this customer case study, right? So all the knowledge that you gained so far, the architecture that you noticed, or the design that you saw, obviously is what this large enterprise has already deployed within their AWS and other accounts, right? So when we were talking to this financial customer, obviously they are a brownfield customer. They already deployed a lot of resources in AWS. They are primary AWS user, and they wanted to secure their multi-cloud infrastructure with a zero standing privilege mantra, right? So the main challenge for them, I would say, was the static credential and over privilege access across environment. So the way they started, basically, they started building a homegrown tool for AWS, and they quickly noticed that it was causing a lot of issues in this case. Why? Because the tool was built for AWS, but they realized that they wanted to also extend some of the workload in Azure. And obviously this tool is not going to work there. They had the dedicated full-time resources to support this tool. And that is also taking cycles from the important resources they had. The multi-cloud was obviously adding complexity because, like any large enterprise, when they do mergers or acquisition, they acquire new technology, new cloud. So, who's going to support, and provide the functionality across the board. And don't forget, like any other enterprise, they have the on-premise, right? So this DIY approach was not working for them, and it was not really a business differentiator. And they noticed the compliance and visibility gaps within that application as well. So their auditor were also challenging them on some of the practices they followed, right? There were a lot of delays because of the manual provisioning of this homegrown tool, and users wanted to get access to this. Obviously, like I said, there was a friction that was created between different teams. So that's when they actually reached out to us, and we actually provided a very comprehensive just-in-time access solution with Britive technology, eliminating the persistent admin credentials, and it actually reduced the risk exposure, right? So obviously, this company, you can imagine, is a Fortune 500 financial leader. They specializes in payment processing, banking solution. It's a huge portfolio. They acquired multiple companies. They were pioneers of the cloud transformation, right? And they were sort of struggling in this area, right? So when they acquired this solution, they got the business value right from get-go, right? Their security teams were happy, their developers were happy because we actually provided them all the tool set that they needed, the CLI, the SDK, API, Terraform that I talked about, right? Their auditors were happy because now they can see all the auditing right from one single platform, all the reports that I showed you, out of the box report. The logs were there. They were actually getting, really meaningful data from those logs and reports, because now they can clearly see who's trying to get access and who has, the access that they should not, right? So from the compliance perspective, all of it happened very quickly, and within, days, we were able to make them audit ready, right? So again, like I said in the beginning, this is a very important use case that we see day in, day out. These challenges are real, and they're common across the board. So please do come talk to us, and we can actually share more detail, not only about this customer, but other customers, like I showed you on my slides, like Gap or Toyota or other industry giants out there. Okay, so where is the industry going? Like I said, and also Simon also mentioned, there is a rise of agentic AI identities now. And they are very different than non-human identities. Why? Because within the non-human identity, you still have a workflow, a process, or steps that they follow to get access to different systems. The agentic AI is completely different ballgame. You have this, bot, you have the agent, there is the LLM, they can reason with this LLM, and they can come up with a completely different action plan or workflow. And these agents, they can also talk to each other. So who is going to protect all that? You need protection for the agentic AI agents as well, right? So this is, again, we have helped customers who have actually deployed our solution to protect their AI agent or AI agentic workflows. And behind the scene, it's the same platform, it's the same unification that we provide, and we bring the same common policy, security policy framework across the board for all the different personas in your environment, right? So these agents, when they want to get access to these critical resources, they also get access only what they need access to, right? And it's just in time, it's ephemeral. Once they get access to it, or it's automatically revoked. And like I said, this is extended not only to the cloud and SaaS world, but also to the hybrid and on-premise locations. With that, I just want to conclude this session. Thanks a lot again for staying with us. There are a lot of resources we have produced to help you start your journey, accelerate your journey. We have our documentation, technical documentations on docs.britive.com, extremely important resource. We have the GitHub repository. We have our Terraform. You can go take a look at the registry. We also provide hands-on labs. So if you are interested, we can actually show you, and you can actually touch and feel this with our hands-on lab. Your interaction should start from the AWS Marketplace, and artifacts are there to help you understand what we provide, what AWS brings to the market. And you saw the slide, right? When Simon was presenting all these security controls and the policies and reports that they have. Obviously, since we are sitting on AWS, we are automatically, giving all these the compliance and auditing capabilities with it, right? So we have the SaaS architecture is a well-architected, and thoroughly tested and vetted by AWS. So come take a look at the documentation, request a demo. We have a podcast. If you want to join the podcast, reach out to us. You don't have to talk about Britive. It's an industry-specific podcast talking about the industry challenges and solutions. And with that, I would say thank you. And we have this email here if you want to reach out to us, right? Thanks a lot.
Shahzad, do we have time for a few questions? We actually had several come in from the audience while we were in the discussions.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And then Simon, of course, please feel free to jump in here as well. So the first one is someone was asking if, this is probably for you, Shahzad, can you double click on some of the advanced capabilities the Britive platform provides in addition to IAM, role assumption, just-in-time access? I think you touched on that a little bit in an earlier slide.
Yeah, exactly. So Britive, if you look at this, role assumption and just-in-time access is just one, right? There are a lot of advanced features that we provide as part of the platform, right? The support for the Kubernetes, the granular access for Kubernetes, for example, like what we provide is a very advanced. Why? Because it's the same format and same policy model that is now applicable to your Kubernetes as well, right? In the advanced capabilities, I mentioned about the approval flows, the Slack, right? So these are some of the things that you will see are being part of the platform and are very advanced. Customers are heavily using it. The on-premise access is also very unique because, like I said, in the on-premise world, people are using the proxy-based solution, the legacy solutions, and they're just rotating the password, right? So that should not be the case, right? So these are some of the advanced capabilities that we have as part of the platform.
Okay, great. So the next question is, how do you go about access approvals? So you just mentioned that we have that in the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So the question continues that they get pushback from internal development teams around approvals, delaying deployments, and things like that with their current access solution. How does Britive help solve that?
Yeah. So Britive actually, like I said, becomes part of your existing workflow process, right? And when you create the Britive policies, we give you this choice of, how do you want this authorization to be approved? Maybe for your, well-trusted resources, you might not need the approval, right? So we give you this option. So approval is not something that you must have in the system. It's an optional constraint or guardrail that we provide. And like I said, the approval itself can be curated based on your requirement and how your organization want to approach it, right? So in my case, for example, if I take you back to this AWS example again, I have one profile where the approval was required. So I requested this approval, and you can see my approval is valid for 22 minutes now, right? Now I have the ability to check out the profile, right? And in terms of the, how you get the approval, you can actually integrate it with the Jira ticketing system. Like you see, I have the Jira ticket assigned to me for me to work on AWS as an admin, right? So now I can proceed to checkout. Now, once I proceed to checkout, I will get access to AWS as with full admin capabilities, right? And in terms of the advanced features and approval, like I mentioned before, you don't have to leave your desk or your favorite tool. You will see that, for example, this request came in to Slack, and then my coworker, he approved this request, right? So that's how this approval could look like. But again, there are, platform is very advanced, very flexible. So there are a number of different options based on, how you want to approach it. Some customer would like to have approval done in advance. Let's say if there is a weekend or holiday coming in, that's also possible. Some would like to have the regular expression in between to check if the approval is really necessary or valid or not. So there are a lot of options in this area.
Great. And final question that we got live here is, does Britive make sense if I am AWS only right now?
Oh, 100%. 100%. It makes perfect sense if you're 100% AWS, because this platform was built to solve a very serious problem of getting access, granular access to the resource. because this excessive permission problem is across the board, right? So if you are in AWS and if you're not using an authorization platform like Britive, I would say there is a higher chance of you getting breached. And I discussed this during my presentation. Why is it so critical? Because I have seen it, these practices, and this case study is a prime example of the fact that this customer was actually 100% in AWS when they started this journey, right? And then they acquired other cloud, and then they realized that this is so important. So they were actually feeling the pain. Even within the AWS, they had this homegrown tool, but it wasn't providing them the audit capabilities, the compliance reporting, the visibility that they needed. The connectivity to their on-premise system was also something critical. So 100%, you need this tool, this product, this approach, even if you are in one single cloud 100%.
Fantastic. That is all the live questions we have. And of course, if future questions continue to come in through LinkedIn, the team will gladly respond to those asynchronously afterwards.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Britive, for the invite. And yeah, if you have any AWS questions or need support, feel free to reach out to Britive and they can put us in contact.
Awesome. Okay, bye.